It is finally that time of the month where you can look over to your partner and say, look, darling, I know it's that time of the month, but I don't care because Tech Yes City has a used PC parts hunt of the month where he's looking for the best deals on CPUs, GPUs, and anything in between, where the first deal we've got right here in the hand is a GTX 1080, and we picked this up for not 180 Aussie dollars, which is what I initially offered the guy from 250, but I got it for 150 because I ended up going this morning to pick it up, and the guy thought he had sent me a message to tell me he wouldn't be there at the time that we arranged, but the message didn't go through. And so I'm waiting at his place for 5 minutes, and then finally he said, well, I won't be home for another half an hour. And because I only lived like literally walking distance to this guy's home, it was actually really good in terms of convenience. One of the most convenient deals I've ever had in terms of being close to me. Because he was only 2 minutes up the road, I just drove home, quickly waited for him to get back home, and then he said, well, for messing you around like that, I'll do it for 150 Aussie dollars. And I'm thinking, for a GTX 1080, that's a pretty solid deal. So I'll put the USD pricing up on the screen for you guys as well. But I know one thing, a lot of you guys have been saying, look, Brian, bring back the Madman intro. And you don't just bring back the Madman intro, you have to get mad deals to bring back the Madman intro. Welcome back to Tech Yes City, and we have just finished up at Les's place. Now, we go see Les every month, usually, to see what used parts he's got for us on special. And right in my hand here, we've actually got an interesting proposition. This is a GTX 1070, but apparently it doesn't work. So Les is like, look, I'll give you this card. If you get it working, then you can flick me some money, which we haven't even negotiated, but I'll check it out later in the parts hunt, see if we can get that 1070 working. But in terms of deals, we just ended up picking up a heap of random different PCs, mainly OEMs. We got two Dell 4th gens, i7 4790s. They were loaded with 16 gigabytes of RAM, 256 gigabyte SSDs, and then we got two Lenovo's as well, and they were 4th gens with similar specs. Now, we paid roughly $100 a piece for each of these. I think he wanted $5 more for the Lenovo's because he knows that they're a little bit better for recasing, and that's fair game. He knows his stuff. I know what I want too, and that's still a decent price. But then I'd say one of the best deals I got from him was this 7th gen, well, actually 6th gen. It's an H110 motherboard, and we got this without the i5 because he originally had an i5 in it with 8 gigabytes of DDR4 memory. And so we got this, and I said, look, add in another 8 gigabytes, take out the i5, and then giving me the best price on that. He also took out the GPU. And so we ended up getting this whole system for 90 Aussie dollars. So I was really happy with that because I've actually got a i7 6th gen to slot straight into that motherboard, and that will make for a pretty decent PC considering, and this is actually one really interesting thing, I actually sold that 1080 Ti PC already to someone as soon as I listed it this morning. So I actually flipped two PCs this morning. These were the PCs in that recent video I did with making the cheapest gaming PCs in the world. And I'll put the link to that video up here if you haven't seen it. But basically, we're going competitive and it's starting to work. Like, the market does demand that cheaper, those lower margins, and it makes a big difference. Even just shaving $50 or $100 off your final price is just making a huge difference. At least that is what I'm finding with the Tech Yes preliminary findings here. So that means we just got to find the best prices on GPUs, CPUs. It's actually really funny because the guy who bought the 1080 Ti PC has been watching the channel from Estonia for 4 years, and then he only just came over to Australia 1 month ago, and he's on the Gold Coast. So it was really cool. So you guys are awesome. Thanks for watching the content. And yeah, I took care of him. I gave him the keyboard and mouse. I threw that in with a deal, and also ended up selling him the 240 hertz monitor that I got from Audi for cost. So he was really happy with that 1080 Ti system, and coupled with a 240 hertz 1080p monitor. But it's a really weird thing we got going on right now, because I'm talking about getting the best deals here, there, and up until this point in time in this parts hunt, we had definitely been getting some really good deals. Except now I've got to go pick up an RTX 3090, and I'm picking it up for 1,100 Aussie dollars. Now, it's not the best deal. In fact, there's RTX 3090s up for sale for around $1,000. It's just that I've got a customer who wants a PC, and he's already put a deposit down on it, and he wants an Aorus, and it's got to have 24 gigabytes of VRAM. So I'm just like, okay, well, that's going to be your 3090. It's going to be pretty much your cheapest option for what you want there. And so what we're going to do right now is we found this one. It was up for 1,500. We offered 1,100. They've accepted. And if I look on eBay, the prices of these 3090s, especially for an Aorus, is just through the roof. So I guess this is the only viable option I have. And I mean, I'm making profit on this whole sale when I get it done, and there's the deposit there. So I guess if you've got a no-brainer like that, it's always good to snag it up. But after that, there's also a B460 motherboard, which we're negotiating on. So hopefully they come back, because they're actually near this place right now. So let's go get this 3090, see what condition it's in, and then hopefully we get this B460 motherboard, because I just cannot find any 10th gen motherboards like anywhere for a decent price. And the reason I really need a 10th gen motherboard is because I have a 10400F just sitting around doing nothing. So I really want to get that in a build and yeah, not have it sitting around doing nothing. And now we've just picked up this RTX 3090, and it is actually an interesting story with this card, because they showed me the card and it has he put a custom cooler on the back of the card, which I believe on the 3090s was actually a thing, because apparently the VRAM chips on the back of the card got too hot versus the ones on the front. But regardless, it was actually scary to see the invoice for this thing, where it was coming out at 3,650 Aussie dollars. That's what he paid for it. And I was like, wow, man, those high-end GPUs, they devalue very fast, very quickly. So this one here, it looks like it's in pretty good condition. I still got to clean it up because I want to make it look like brand new, because some of the back ports have a bit of dust on them and stuff. I think he would have plugged it up to actually quite a few monitors, because all the DisplayPort cable ports were a little bit dirty. And then right beside that, we just picked up this as well, because it was just around the corner from this RTX 3090 deal. And this was a B460F Strix Gaming. Now, I just can't find a 10th gen motherboard anywhere for a decent price. I mean, we tried in the last parts hunt, but we ended up getting that Lenovo motherboard, and I don't even actually know what it was exactly, because it didn't even turn on. And we got our money back for that. But hopefully this one, it works out fine. He said it's brand new, he's just never used it. He won it on some raffle thing, so he just never used it at all. So he said it should work absolutely fine. So we will regardless test that when we get back. I'm actually gonna test out everything thoroughly when we get back to the studio. But speaking of other deals that have popped up, we actually had a funny story with this Lenovo that we organized a deal, $50. We already organized the money down to go pick it up. They agreed to the price, and then I said, look, I'm gonna come right now. They just turned around and said, oh, I've sold it. And I'm like, wow, so unless someone teleported to this deal and picked it up, it just doesn't make any sense. I think maybe they had it up for 65. I offered them 40 initially, and then we came back and agreed on 50, but maybe I guess they want that extra 15 bucks. And so they could have just told us that instead of like doing the whole, teleport thing. I doubt someone's going to come in within 5 minutes. Anyhow, besides that, we've also lined up an RTX 3060 Ti for 300. I mean, they got back to us and said, yeah, they'll take the 300, but then I've asked them for the address and stuff, and they haven't gotten back to me yet. So I guess that's what used PC parts can do to you sometimes. It can set you on a bit of a wild ride. But speaking of wild, we have put out a heap of different feelers on whether it's whole PCs, CPUs, RAM. You know how I go and the used PC parts hunts. I just put out offers on what I think would be a solid deal if I can land it for that, but we've got to wait for that to come back. And I think because it's starting to get a little bit late where I am now, I might just head back to the studio and then continue this on, start testing all this stuff out tonight, make sure everything works fine, but then into the morning, start off a new day with some new prospects, because we've only got a few deals so far, and I always want that extra deal. I'm not satisfied basically with what we've got so far. So we're now here the next morning, and last night I was just driving home on the way home, and favorite pizza restaurant was there, pizza and beer. That's what happened. Anyhow, this is the weirdest problem I've seen on a GPU. Well, one of the weirdest problems I've seen on a GPU to date. So this card, when we put it in the test bed system, it would install the driver and then just black out. And I initially thought it was just a dud card, but then I spoke to the guy and he was really chill. Like, props to the guy who sold me it. Really cool guy. He's just like, man, just pop around. I'll give you a refund, it's fine. But I swear it was working. It was working when I pulled it out. And so I tried it on an X4 slot on my test bed system, and then it worked absolutely fine. And so I asked Twitter, I'm like, Twitter, what's going on here? Has anyone seen this before? And people are like, well, it could be faulty PCIe lanes, which is just really weird. And now I'm trying it on a different system, and it was giving out problems. It did work in X16 mode on this motherboard, this H110, because ultimately this is what I'd want to couple it with in a gaming PC. But then it was stuttering, and the FPS was, sometimes it'd just black out for a couple of seconds, and then the FPS would be like 10% of what it should be. But then I changed it to PCIe Gen 1 X16, and it seems to be working fine. So that is, I've never seen this problem before. So I've got to do a little bit more investigation with it, because I mean, $150 for a 1080 is a really good price. It's just that, of course, when it ultimately comes down to, when I sell a gaming PC, I'm going to guarantee it, and I want it to work 100%. I want it to work flawlessly. So this one's just a weird one. I don't know. Like, I've actually never been in this position before, and it's just, I want the 1080. It's just, I don't want it to have any problems. So what a weird way. And so I've actually, it's sad because the motherboards that I'm looking at here, even this one from Les, we'll talk about that soon. All the motherboards here, I don't have in the BIOS the mode to change it to X8. I think that's like only on mini ITX boards. It's just weird because the Ryzen card support, this one here in particular had like a mining mode, but that only changed it to Gen 2, X16. So I really want to try it on X8. And I just, at the moment, don't have any quick options to test that with. And so to see if that works fine, because X8 PCIe 3 will be absolutely fine on a 1080, but that one's still work in progress. I guess I will be tinkering with it a bit more just to find out what the go is exactly, because yeah, it's a shame because it's a nice card. The card actually looked like it's been taken really good care of too. So there's that. But then we got this build here from Les. We're going to recase this. This was the Acer we got off him with the i7-6700, all specced out. And we're going to have to use the power supply with it too, because this has a proprietary power connector for the Acer. But everything else looks like it's an easy recase. They've got standard USB connectors on it, USB 3, USB 2. There's no other proprietary stuff on it. So a recase should be easy. And if we're going to use this case for a real low-end banger, then we can just use a budget power supply. It should slot in fine and everything should be okay. And then right here, Les decided to chuck in a free fan for us. So it's like, you can just do party time now. Party time right here at Tech Yes City with a free stand. I mean, just look at that. Could you imagine yourself at a rave party with this monitor stand? You'd be one of the most popular people in the pit. Our RTX 3090, it had this weird backplate on it, I'm guessing to cool the back of the memory right here. We just took that off, ran the benchmarks. This card was running absolutely fine. I wouldn't expect any less for the price that I paid for it, but that should work out absolutely fine in a build. And then we've got over here even more weird news, and that is the 1070 that we got for free from Les. That actually works fine. I've tested it so far, even tested out the memory clocks and the GPU clocks and stretched them a little bit, and there was no crashing at all. So this is kind of like a healthy 1070. And so I've got to talk to Les and find out a little bit more about the history of this card, because I believe when I went there, he said the person who gave it to him replaced it with an RX 6600. And so the one scenario that comes to my mind here with this card is that perhaps they had like a 3rd gen or a 4th gen board, and what they were trying to do was replace it with a higher end, say 1070, but then because the BIOS doesn't support the booting on this particular card, they then changed the RX 6600 and it works fine, because there is this weird issue with some of these older 3rd gen and 4th gen proprietary like OEMs like Dell's and stuff, where NVIDIA cards won't work. In fact, we saw it in my recent video where the 1030 would work and the 1660 or the 1650, I forgot which exact card it was, wouldn't work. So when we replaced it with the GT 1030, it worked fine. And so that can have BIOS boot issues, and that's kind of what I think it was. So I just thought the card was faulty, but it's working fine here. Then we got this B460, and that's brand new, and it works like brand new. So I'm really happy there, because we needed a new home for this 10400F. I pulled this out of a dumpster build, this 10400F, and the CPU was literally the only thing working. So I got that for a really good price. I just wanted to piece out a build with this 32 gigabytes of RAM. And so I finally found a 10th gen motherboard. And to be fair, this one's actually, even though I feel like I paid a little bit too much for it, 120 Aussie dollars, at least it's a really nice example of a B460. So like this Strix motherboard looks good. Hopefully, I mean, the VRM looks like it's seriously overdone for a 10400F, but hey, that's gonna work really well. So finished the testing. I'm actually starting to pull apart the parts and mix and match already, because actually with my more competitive pricing, things are actually starting to move a lot faster. And like I said earlier in the video, just $50 or $100 difference can just make a huge difference to momentum. And especially on Facebook, momentum's a massive thing when it comes to moving PCs. But talking of Facebook, we've got deals that I've lined up 3 GPUs. I've lined up 2 1660s, well, one of them's a Super. And then I lined up a 3060 Ti. And really good prices on all these offers, and they've accepted. The problem is they're just not giving me times and dates to pick it up. And it's Saturday night, Sunday now. So like, I just think maybe a lot of these people want more money, and they're just waiting, hoping that someone will come in with a higher offer before they decide to pass it off to me, which, I mean, it's fair enough, but I always just appreciate transparency. Like, hey mate, I'm trying to get a bit more for it. If that person doesn't come through, I'll sell it to you by X date. And that's just much better for me, because I'm like hanging here like, okay, what do I do? Just do I forget about that deal, move on? But I also want to pick up the deal. So it's kind of like, that's what the used PC parts hunt can be like sometimes. But I mean, 3 deals in a row, and actually looking at other deals this morning, we did find from the same person, Mr. Durden, that's the person in Fight Club, he had a Ryzen 5 3600. So I messaged him, I said, look, that's a fair price, 70 Aussie dollars. I'll gladly go pay asking on that. Let me know when I can pick that up, along with the 1660. So I'm waiting on him to reply. But then we also found another potential deal. They have this whole PC listed with 64 gigabytes of DDR4 memory. They say they need it gone ASAP, and they've had it up for 5 days, I think. And it's got 64 gigabytes of DDR4 memory. It's got a 5600X, B550. I think the GPU is a GTX 1070. But if I can get it for 350 Aussie, that's a really good deal, because the RAM alone, you're paying like 200 Aussie for the RAM, like 64 gigabytes of DDR4, especially when it's in it looks like it's in 16 gigabyte kits. So if I can get that and just piece it all out and mix and match, that'll be an absolute bargain. So hoping that they get back to us. But in terms of other deals, looking around, scouring around like I do, and there's just really nothing else coming up at this point in time. I mean, Gumtree, I don't know what, like people like, oh, try Gumtree. Gumtree has just turned into an absolute sinkhole at the moment. Like I put up a PC for sale, and there's just, within like 2 minutes of listing that PC, there's like about 5 scammers that contact you now on Gumtree. So that's absolutely gone to and there's like no deals on there either. So it looks like Gumtree's gotten even worse in the last year. And then Facebook's just getting a lot better in terms of marketplace where I'm locally. So it's kind of sad to see that with Gumtree, especially, it's just like scammer infestation on Gumtree now. It's actually getting pretty bad. So hopefully Gumtree can do something about that and get their site back to working properly and really well again. Anyway, we'll come back in hopefully picking up a deal in the next few hours, or I'll just come back with an update in a few hours, because honestly, I just want a few more deals. So we now finally have scored some deals in the Tech Yes Mobile, and it comes from Tyler Durden. And he ended up messaging me back. We ended up organizing that I was going to pick up the Ryzen 5 3600 for $70, and also I was going to pick up the 1660 Super for $120. Then when I got there, he also had a Ryzen 5 5600X, and I got that also for 140 Aussie dollars. He also had some other stuff, but he hadn't tested it and seen if it worked yet. But I was like, man, if you test that stuff, just let me know how much you want for it. So he's going to add me as a friend. So I'm just absolutely honored to have the manager of Fight Club add me as a friend on Facebook. That's pretty cool. So other than that, we've checked out the pins on these CPUs. There's no bent pins on both the Ryzen CPUs. He did have also an X670 motherboard, but apparently it just sold that 20 minutes before I rocked up. So that was actually like 200 Aussie dollars for an X670 Prime motherboard. So that would have been a decent deal as well. So he had some deals that were cracking. Also now we're gonna go pick up the final deal. So the 3060 Ti guy, he did say it was okay, come pick up the card, but then he never got back to me. But we've also got a 1660 as well, and they've gotten back to me. We're gonna go pick that up now as the final deal, and then we're gonna rock back to the studio, quickly test this stuff out, and then we're gonna conclude the parts hunt, because I got my extra piece of cheese, but there's also some other important stuff to talk about, and that's what's going on with the market right now. It's starting to move again, but it's definitely starting to move because of certain things. So let's talk about those certain things as well, but let's go get this last deal and quickly pick it up. So now we're here, back at the studio, finishing up this month with the two GPUs. We just tested them. They both work absolutely fine. Those Ryzen CPUs, I've checked the pins thoroughly. They look like they're good. I'm going to assume that they just work absolutely fine because the GPU was immaculate, great condition. But I will, of course, put them in builds and test them out really soon. But also the guy who I picked the CPUs up off, he just said, look, if there's any problems, just bring it back too. He's not out to hose anyone. So I think lately, especially this month, I've come into some really good people, and that's a good thing. It always balances out. And in previous months, I've come into some dodgy people, especially during the $100 flip up challenge. But this month, I was really happy that you come into people and they're just so chill, so laid back, and they're just genuine people, especially with the GTX 1080. That was really cool. Dealing with that guy was just a breeze. He was awesome, willing to just give me a refund. And that's why I was like, well, I actually kind of just want to get this GTX 1080 to work because he's just such a cool guy. I don't want to refund it. Plus, it's 150 Aussie dollars. It's a really good deal for a 1080 to begin with. So kind of like, I really want to get this thing just working flawlessly. And the thing is, it actually does work fine in PCIe Gen 1 X16, which is just so bizarre. And that works on all the 3 rigs after I tested it in that configuration. So yeah, it's a real bit of an enigma going on there with the GTX 1080. But if you guys have some feedback on that, do let us know in the comments. But summing up this month, I'll put up the tally of this month's parts hunt on the screen for you. The deals are getting really good. The RTX 3090, I know that's not really a deal. I'm just putting that up there. That's just more of a request, but you guys like to see all the deals I pick up regardless of whether they're just for pure flips or whether they're pre-orders and whatnot. But that one is just, it was the worst of the bunch, I'd say. But the best of the bunch for me personally would be, I would say that Ryzen 5 3600 for 70 Aussie dollars. That's just an absolute bargain. Like off the top of my head, it's just like, that's a really good price. And of course that GTX 1070, which we got for free. But of course I am going to give Les some money after I put it in a build, take it through its paces, make sure it's just surviving the long run as well. And so if it does, then yeah, I'll give Les a kickback. And hopefully it doesn't have any problems, but it looked pretty good, at least from the quick testing that I did here. But other than that, guys, do let us know in the comments what was your favorite deal this month and what deals have you been picking up lately that you are seeing just come into effect and sort of becoming a new meta even in these last few months. Personally, I'm just seeing a lot of 1660s. They just seem to be going out at pretty good prices. And I'd rather get a 1660 than a 1070, for example, because of just the better power consumption and the ease of the card. I mean, the 1070 does have that extra 2 gigabytes of VRAM. It is good in a flip, but I'm finding it $100 or $120. Usually that's a really cheap price to get a GPU at. The 1660, I actually haven't personally found it's selling any worse than a 1070. Every time I put in a 1070 or a 1660 around the same price, they both move relatively quickly. So even though one's got 2 gigabytes less VRAM, I think people look at that and they look at the performance, it's like, oh, well, slightly better, especially the 1660 Super. And they're like, well, the power consumption's better. So, hey, it's probably a better card. So that one's an interesting one. I think that one's moving into my personal favorites just because I can't really find any 1070s. I mean, outside of this lucky Les deal that I got, outside of that, I just don't really find it. Lately, I haven't been finding any 1070s for good deals. I mean, the last time we tried to get a 1070, the guy just ghosted me. And speaking of this month, getting ghosted, that Office PC, my friend messaged the lady just because I just wanted to see. And anyway, she ended up having it for another day. So yeah, she was just basically agreeing on a deal and then reneging for $15, I think, 15 bucks. I mean, $15, but more so just be honest with me, just be like, I agreed on the price, but I've changed my mind, sorry. I want to get the $65 for it. I appreciate that rather than sniffing out BS and then confirming the BS. But I guess me following up from that, I just want to know if my radar, for not even meeting people, just for reading the sort of way they text you and the actions that they take, you want to build up your radar and get your confidence. And so in the future, you just learn to trust that. And so I guess that's why I'm doing that process there. Anyhow, other than that, let's get onto the market, the economic conditions, the flipping. I'm finding in a recent video I did, making the cheapest PCs in the world, sort of just as a joke on the title, but making some really cheap PCs in that video, I was becoming more competitive with my pricing, and it is starting to react. Like when you're getting more competitive, even if it's just $50, just $100, it's just making such a difference. And so this is what I'm finding, it's just getting into a much more competitive market. And when you're being much more competitive and you're lowering your margins, that's when you're just gonna start moving more. And on top of that, I'm being very strict with how much I'm paying. If someone's not willing to accept my offer, bang, I'm moving on, because there's just going to be relatively no profit in it, especially when you're guaranteeing this stuff and you're putting that risk on top of your flip. But in terms of the worldwide macro at the moment, I haven't looked in the last few weeks because things are still moving the way in the last update we did. So if you haven't seen that update, I'll put the link up here. But things are still following that trend as it seems. And so we're waiting on that big shock that's going to come, and then followed by the mass printers. So just wait for the big shock. But in the meantime, parts are getting ridiculously cheap. In fact, they're getting so cheap. And I was looking on AliExpress and they've got crazy deals on CPU coolers and especially Ryzen CPUs too. I was actually gonna make a dedicated video for that. I just don't have time to. But I bought some Ryzen CPUs and some CPU coolers as well. These $14 Aussie CPU coolers, because I just need that stuff. And so those prices as well, definitely, as always, keep your local prices in check when people are asking too much. And they also keep the retailers selling new in your local areas in check too. So 7800 X3D is just under 300 US. That's like, wow, that's a really good deal. Anyway, with all that aside, hope you guys enjoyed this month's used PC parts hunt of the month. If you did, then you know what to do. Also, you guys said you liked the cyberpunky setup here with the cyberpunk car in the background and the LED lights. So decided to do that in this outro. So always, guys, sound off in the comments. Love reading them as always, and I'll see you next time. Peace out for now. Bye.